What's up, guys? I'm Josh and I lift things. I'm here to talk about training variables. Lifting 101. Before we get into it, all the classics: like, comment, subscribe, share, watch the whole thing. Follow these socials if you want, join the Discord. All links in the description. In this video, I'm not going to give any recommendations as to the proper amount to use of each training variable. That'll depend on goals, training history, and so much more. So let's just save that for a separate video. So what are the training variables and why are they useful for proper exercise programming? Different sources will tell you different things, but the main ones are intensity, or how close to your 1 rep max you're lifting; volume, or how many sets and reps you're lifting; frequency, how often a muscle group gets trained; tempo, how fast and slow each rep is; and rest periods, how long you're chilling in between each set. You'll sometimes see stuff listed like duration of exercise, but that's kind of included when we talk about volume. Some people say recovery, but that's kind of the antithesis to training. And finally, people will bring up exercise selection, which does play a big part in general programming, but it's not what we're referring to here. So, intensity. Intensity is defined as how close to your 1 rep max you are while you're training. For instance, 100% intensity would be a 1 rep max or an all-out sprint. Intensity is not defined as how hard a set was. You could do a set for 40 plus reps that would be very difficult, but a very low intensity. Some studies that go way back even separate intensity by what type of energy system was being used during the set, but we're not going to talk about that here. Again, let's save that for lifting 102. So next we have volume. Volume is easily defined as the amount of work that you do. This can be measured a few different ways, with the duration of the exercise done that day, the weight lifted in a certain time frame, or just the total amount of sets and reps. Volume has multiple time frames that you can even consider. You could break down volume on each day, such as, oh, I did 10 sets of bench today, or you can measure it weekly, like I worked my arms for 30 sets this week. Keep in mind that intensity and volume have an inverse relationship. As intensity increases, volume must decrease, and vice versa. This makes sense when you think about it. At a low weight or a low intensity, you could do high reps or a higher volume. If instead you did high weight, a high intensity, you would have to use low reps, a low volume. This is very important to understand for proper exercise programming. Moving on to frequency. Frequency is often roughly described as how often a muscle group gets trained, usually per week. So if you were doing a beginner linear progression program, which is full body 3 times a week, you are training full body 3 times a week. That means that every muscle group has a 3 times a week frequency. A super famous template like push-pull legs, for instance, where you do push-pull legs, rest, push-pull legs, that would be a 2-time frequency for every muscle group. You would have 2 push days a week, which would be chest and triceps. You would have 2 pull days a week, which would be back and biceps, and then 2 leg sessions a week. You'll even see some trainees use a 1 times a week frequency, which isn't that optimal, especially for natural beginners, where every single muscle group only has 1 singular day. Think about it as a chest day, an arm day, a core day, whatever the hell. But it's also worth mentioning that you may think that you're only doing 1 time a week frequency when you're actually getting a bit more. So let's go back to the body part split. If you have a chest day and an arm day, well, on chest, you're definitely going to be hitting your triceps. Same thing if you have a back day, you're going to be hitting your biceps. So your arms may be getting a little bit additional frequency that you didn't account for. This is very important to understand for overtraining or just things that generally get way too much work, like the anterior deltoids or the front of your shoulders. These are worked heavily in virtually every upper body movement. So then on shoulder days, if you're doing front raises, you're probably doing a little bit too much for them. Next, we have tempo. Tempo is defined as how long each repetition takes. This is commonly referred to as TUT for time under tension. The typical notation used when programming this in would be XXXX, where the variable X defines the amount of time spent on each phase of a movement. So if you had a tempo of 4x2x, you would have a 4-second eccentric, which would be the lengthening of a muscle or the negative, 0 pause or stretch at the bottom of the movement, a 2-second contraction, a shortening or positive of the lift, with then 0 pause at the top of the movement. You can then also start to throw in isometric holds, which is where the muscle's neither getting shortened nor lengthened, in the middle of either of the concentric or the eccentric portion of the lift. This can be very beneficial for breaking through strength plateaus, for helping beginners try to get their first pull-up, as well as just add another way to progress on a certain exercise without having to add weight or reps. And then finally, we have rest periods. Rest periods are just that. They're the time spent resting in between each set. This can be modulated for a lot of different goals. For a high intensity compound lift like heavy squats, resting longer will help your body build back up that energy, while resting for a shorter period of time can be more useful for cardio or GPP training, as well as just lowering the amount of time you have to spend in the gym. Stuff like supersets, giant sets, drop sets are all just ways to modulate this rest period training variable. So there we have it. I understand that this was a pretty basic breakdown, but that's why this is Training 101. With this information, you should should now be able to look at a program and see some of the pros and cons based on the decisions that they make. So hopefully this helps you suss out some of the worst programs that you'll see online. If you did make it this far and you want to see more of this type of content, like and subscribe, follow the socials. They're all up here. Join the Discord. All the links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.